Hi, welcome to Mind and Body Wellness, a weekly television show where we talk about the health of your mind, body, and spirit, where we interview a variety of guests from the mainstream to the alternative. I'm your host, Clovis Colley, and today in the studio I have with me Lisa Woodford from Let's Just Walk Coaching. Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely, nice to be here.
Okay, so you coach kiddies, and
everyone from 9 to 62.
okay.
Yeah.
So I think our listeners are becoming familiar with what a life coach is, and I've had 3 or 4 life coaches on, not only Amy McKay, Scott Anderson, and a couple others. And so this life coaching business, I always ask, where does this come from? Why do we have life coaches?
Oh, I think it's a great alternative for a lot of people because some people need help, but they don't need therapy. Everyone can use help with something, whether it's relationships, parenting, financial, business. There's that one thing, that nagging question or the same pattern you go through all the time and it just never changes. And sometimes an outside perspective can really help you get started in the right direction on those things.
Well, I really believe that's true. I mean, we can really get engrossed in our own little patterns and really get to start to loop. And people will come to me and they'll say, well, I've tried everything. And when I distill it down, I find out they've only tried about 2 things. Is that what you...
Absolutely. And, it never seems to be the right thing either. It's talking to the same people, trying habits that, or trying a new ritual for 2 or 3 days and then having it fall off. And that's to them is a trial, So the errors come pretty often when those are the situations. But when they actually have some accountability with me, or with you, and they sit down weekly or monthly or bi-monthly with someone and they talk about these issues, they can really, they're held accountable, they have new ideas pop into their head, their awareness is totally changed, and just with that little bit of shift, they can really make a difference in their own lives just because they're paying attention to things that were not on their radar before.
Absolutely. Well, one thing that I find interesting, somebody was relaying a story about landing in Heathrow, and the pilot said, remember, Americans, when you're driving, always keep your passenger next to the curb. And that one piece of information changes and consolidates a lot of thinking in such a way that all of a sudden it becomes very easy to drive a right-handed car.
Sure.
And so just reframing something can be very, very
Absolutely.
powerful. And if you were left to your own devices, it'd take you about 75 years to figure, just keep the passenger next to the curb.
Right.
So it's always great. I always think 2 minds are much better than one. But so you're getting together with these kids and you're coaching, life coaching, versus sports coaching or music coaching.
Sure.
And so you have outcomes, and the reason they're coming to see you is because they're stuck in their academics or stuck socially, or all of the above?
A little of both, all of the above. Different reasons. Sometimes they're not fitting in at school, or they're not performing at school, or there's for some reason they're shutting down, and the parents can't seem to get through to them. They're in a different life stage, or they're behind developmentally. So a lot of times even the parents might be the ones that are more worried than the kids. And that's tough because I can coach those kids, but what I really need to do is work with the parents. So having the family dynamic and the family all available, all those things seem to come out in the wash, and we help everybody. So it's not just,
right. So you're doing a systemic change with all parties involved, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Why is it all of a sudden much harder to be a kid than it ever was? Or,
well,
it seems like kids are really dealing with a lot of things that maybe they shouldn't have to, or they didn't. Like me, when I was 1975, I just, it was me and the road and my Schwinn Stingray with my ape hangers, and life was really uncomplicated. Is it that complicated for kids now?
I think it still is, and it always was. I think that, social media obviously has a big impact on that. But kids have always been bullied or picked on. That doesn't change, But it's how they're dealing with it anymore. I think everybody has a really high or low tolerance for change. They want immediate gratification, and that's the society that we live in now that we didn't used to. Things used to be laid back. You used to just go outside and play. You used to just kind of roll with the punches and things like that. Well, anymore, you can't escape social media or being around everyone. So some of my kids don't have phones yet, but the immediate gratification factor seems to be they want things fixed, and they want them fixed now. And then the parents jump in right on with that, and if their child is hurting at all, they're jumping in to fix it. Or they're making it a bigger problem than it was initially. Whereas when we were younger, the parents were like, hey, just be in when the lights come on, you know, when street lights are on, you're in the house. That's, you know, my parents never asked me, do you have homework? Is your homework done? They did not rescue me by bringing me things to school, lunch, gym shoes, whatever it was. It's kind of like, you know, the neighborhood was our parent. It took a village, and anybody out there could parent you.
Right.
And anymore,
Well, yeah, of course. I was raised in the era when I was up to no good, and we didn't even have to know the family. They grab you by the scruff of the neck, and where do you live, Sonny? And
exactly.
They take you down and tell your parents, hey.
And then you were in trouble.
He was playing with trying to light some wood pile on fire, and and then they talk to you, tell you.
For me, it was playing in the sewer, but yes, that's
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that era. Are people not as equipped to be parents as they used to? A lot of that seems so natural. And one thing that I was going to say that I really remembered was, one time my cousins were fighting, and I happened to be inside where the parents were, and I always remember this. My grandma said, "No, let them. They have to work it out.
Oh yeah.
Let them work it out." They kind of kept an eye to make sure somebody didn't conk somebody out or split somebody's head open. But there was that thing. You got to let kids kind of learn their own lessons, but at the same time, kind of be there to make sure that nothing gets out of hand.
Right. And I think that's still the case. I don't think that much has changed there, but I do think there's kind of a fear of having your child fail, and that it's so public anymore. So the keeping up with the Joneses factor, or making sure that your child isn't low on the rung, as far as the popularity game, that's a huge one for kids these days. So
is that the pressure right there?
With kids that I work with, even when I was teaching, and that was 5th grade, so 10 years old and things like that, that's when it started, and I really noticed it a lot. Now I see it a lot with 13, 14-year-olds. A lot of pressure fitting in, and that's a lot of where the the term bullying has been overused and swept under the rug now. So there's a lot of, kids have learned to be very covert and manipulative. And
so it's not somebody punching you in the nose, it's somebody undercutting and spreading vicious
rumors,
or horrible rumors about you.
Absolutely, right.
And so it's a little harder to put your finger on. Mm-hmm. And though that's always been the deal, physical abuse is bad enough, but the person that knows how to abuse you mentally and emotionally that you can't put your finger on, that's a real problem, because you can get stuck in that for a long time.
You can be stuck in that for a long time, and those kids adopt some false beliefs that they adopt, as truth, and they live with those every day. Then they go to school and they end up slowly building a mask that they put on and they're hiding behind, and they have their phone as their security, walking down the hallways, and that's all they have, because they don't want to look up and say or do the wrong thing because someone might use it against them. So that constant fear of, am I going to be the next one that's the target, and things like that. So, helping them to build their confidence ahead of time, being proactive. There's so much reactive behavior going on, especially parents, things like that. Being proactive, staying ahead of it, and letting kids know ahead of time, you've got to be ready for whatever might come your way. But if you're ready, you know yourself, you know our values and beliefs, and we're here to support you in that. And that unconditional support and love goes a long way.
Now, when you get made fun of, if you're 13 or 14, and I'm not steeped in that world, I don't have teenagers at home anymore. Mm-hmm. It's been a long, long time since I've been a teenager. Is this, you used to be able to, you'd get made fun of in front of 10 kids. Now you got 10 kids squared. Now you get made fun of in front of 500 kids. Yeah. All at once. So
and it's not necessarily that they're sending that all out and things like that, but there's cameras, there's, guess what, like this, and it does. It's the networking.
So,
Yeah.
so that's the big pressure. That's the big pressure. Do the parents have the values that that our parents had when we were growing up, or are they lost a little bit?
I can only speak from the ones that I've worked with, the ones that I've taught, my own experience, but I do think that parents are really struggling with having their kids not be, the top athlete or student or musician or whatever it is. So there's a lot of pushing even from the families. And these kids.
So the parents maybe have unrealistic some of them might be living in a fantasy land, and I see that with the sports.
Yes.
Everybody's kid's gonna walk on to the Cornhuskers and be the
Right.
And it's just not realistic. It's
No,
ridiculous
it is.
almost.
Yeah.
And
But the flip side of that too is that they can't have their child hurt. Seeing their own child hurt, there's the mama bear syndrome or the papa bear syndrome, where they are right there ready to take anybody down that's going to, affect their child or make them feel bad. But the problem with that then is the child's like, wow, look at that. Look what kind of control I have. I can do something out of their presence that isn't the right thing to do, that doesn't follow our family values, and that might be, the manipulator, or just, hanging out with the leader that's doing all of that. But the parents, when they go home and if anything is said to them, they're like, no, that's not my kid. My kid wouldn't do that, and the kid's like, well, I really know how to work the system here. Yeah, the kids can easily figure out, if mom and dad support me and, are on my side all the time, no matter what, I can use that to my advantage.
Do you see that a lot?
I do.
Well,
Yeah.
I know, with my dad and mom, they would,
Yeah.
if I got accused of something, my parents were thinking, where there's smoke, there might be a little bit of fire. Maybe he's being unjustly, or maybe this is getting carried away, but we're going to get down to the bottom of this. We're going to find out. And if I was guilty, they would ferret it out. But now they're just so.
The accountability is questionable, yeah. I don't
Okay.
know that kids are held as accountable as we used to be. We didn't have that fear and the wrath and things like that. We had it, but anymore, it's kind of like, well, if they believe me, then that's a green light. I can do whatever I want.
So they could become a little slightly, maybe pseudo-sociopathic in their behavior. I hate to use that word.
I have seen that.
But some real problematic type behaviors.
That's hard for schools to catch. That's a big one. The kids go to school, and that's where a lot of things happen, either on the playground or in the hallways, things like that. And you can tell the teachers, and they can be watching the hallways and things like that, but they can't catch everything. They can't be in the lunchroom. They can't stop kids from excluding other kids. And that exclusion is a huge, social tool that they use to their advantage.
Sure, that hurts when you're
Absolutely.
9, 10, 11 years old. It is so important to belong. I don't know if that's a hardwired thing. If we I always think, well, maybe it's because if we get forced out of the group, we could get ate by a T-Rex or a saber-toothed tiger. Maybe it's really hardwired in us to be in the group. And it can be very scary as a 10, 11, 12-year-old to be pushed out of the group. And it's for them at that age, it's a very serious, painful thing.
Absolutely. And I know that we're seeing the results of that with, teen suicide and cutting and all those types of things. But it's not only the underdog, too, or the target that hurts. You have to think about the child who is on top, and they finally made it to that position that they've really, sought after and worked hard for, and all of a sudden they're popular. Well, now that they're there, they don't want to lose that spot. That's a coveted spot, and they'll do anything they can to hold the others down. They're under a lot of pressure, too, to wear the right thing, say the right thing, hang with the right people. Those kids, to hold that spot, that's a lot of pressure. And maybe it's something that they brought on themselves, but those are kids that still need help. They need to have that dynamic shifted. They need a new perspective. They need their social interactions reframed so that they can step down and allow others to come up. They need to realize there's enough love to go around, or there's enough popularity. Everybody can have a little of what, it's not a finite amount.
Right. Can't we just turn off the phones and get along?
Yeah, and I don't think phones are the problem. I really wish we could. It's just,
I
somebody's got to
actually,
be on top, it seems.
somebody stole my phone out of the locker at the gym that I go to, and I didn't have a phone for 4 days.
Oh.
And my brain actually healed, and I have to tell you, I actually felt a lot better not having that phone and looking at that phone all the time. I actually felt much more focused, and it kind of spooked me a little bit,
Yeah.
and now I got the phone back. I'm back to being diffuse and
Well, and
not
I
very
think that's a
focused
really
and-
good thing to do when we go on vacations with our kids and they can't use their phones. We have what's called a phone stack. We get there, put them in a basket or stack them on the table whenever we're eating or anything like that. So I have 10 nieces and nephews and my kids, and whenever they're together, the phones are always put away, and the pressure is down. Granted, we're with family, things like that, but just my daughter and her volleyball team, they did the same thing. And the pressure of not having to respond, be up to date, look at who's saying what, how do I look okay in this picture, all of that self-identity that is so dependent on their personality and their phone, it's just linked together so strongly.
Yeah, I think anybody can get hooked into that. And I took a picture yesterday. My friend had 2 brand new little puppies, so I had 2 little puppies like this, and I put that picture up on Facebook. And so I've had to check Facebook like 1,400 times since yesterday.
Oh,
to
just
find
to
out
see
who
how many
liked my
likes you
picture,
have, yeah.
Who liked my puppy dog picture.
Yeah.
And so I'm very guilty of it also.
It's a
I
culture.
I need some coaching. I need free of this, free of myself. I need to quit thinking about myself and those 2 dogs so much. But,
Yeah, yeah.
So you kind of have a story about how you got into this life coaching. You were a teacher and took some time off to raise your own children.
I did,
And
and
then-
when I wanted to go back into the classroom, I didn't want to go back to being, teaching, but as a teacher, I worked with kids who fall between the cracks. They didn't receive services when they really didn't need them. They struggled either academically or socially. And so I would work with those children during the school hours, after school, and it kind of evolved into working with the parents and the dynamics of what was going on at home as well. And I just loved doing that type of work. So I decided rather than going back and getting a counseling degree or something like that, life coaching was a perfect fit.
Right, so you are certified with I take it this is a well-known life coaching certification?
Yes.
And can you say the name of that?
Strategic intervention.
Okay, and they're big in life coaching.
Yeah.
And okay. Now, when you work with the parents, tell me about something that you would do with a parent that would help give them support in what they need to do.
It depends on the situation. I've had parents rearrange furniture. I've had parents change their sleeping patterns within the home, letting the child, very strict family who ended up letting their child actually sleep on their floor for a little while, or with the big sister, which wasn't allowed before, or something like that. And just to eliminate some fears, change the dynamic of the patterns and the expectations, things like that. So anything from backing off on the homework, letting them be more accountable, taking the reins, handing the kids the reins. A lot of times that's just, they need that control. The control dynamic and power struggles are pretty strong, and the kid can't develop their own self-identity, and they're, responsible for themselves and things like that. They're trying, they know they want to, but they just can't break out of that. Sometimes it's letting the parents know or be aware they have some patterns themselves that don't work with the dynamic that their child needs. Everyone's wired a certain way, and if they understand their child, how they're wired, they can adapt what they're doing or how they're saying things to them to help the child really blossom, become their own, and take control of their own life.
Tell me a neat story about a kid that you helped to give a kid some support and you really saw something cool happen.
Oh gosh. So this is a 14-year-old boy who was kind of, had a rough life, had a tough childhood and had just lost his father. And so I started working with him 2 years later. And at the time he came to me and said, I have no idea who I am. I don't know.
Those are big words for a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah. And on my, my opening sheet, my survey, the first time we sat down together, I said, why did you come to coaching? What was the main thing that brought you here? And I said, what do you want to get out of our sessions together? He said, I want to figure out who I am. I have no idea who I am.
He had been doing some soul searching before he came and talked to you, because that's a pretty good assessment, or the assessment's just a little bit beyond his maybe age group there. I don't know who I am.
Right,
There's
right.
not very many 13 or 14-year-old kids running around saying things like that.
Well, he didn't seem to have a direction in life. He didn't seem to be able to feel his own emotions. He didn't care about anything. Everybody at school was stupid. Nothing really mattered. Why do I need to go to bed or get enough sleep? And he would be up till 3 or 4 in the morning playing video games and sleep until 1 or 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon. He just had no structure built into his life, and he was lost in that. He didn't have any idea where to go. And that's a tough situation to be in when you've just lost your father. There's a big loss there as well. So a big chunk of his identity now is gone, and he's got to either be the man of the family, or he's got to figure out what he wants to do without that guidance and support, things like that. So it was a really tough, he was grieving, he just had a really hard spot in life. And I only worked with him for a short time. The progress was amazing because I really just turned the mirror on him, and we just looked at who are you, and helping someone to find their self-confidence, just find their self-identity, and build that piece by piece. Every session is a piece or a couple pieces of that puzzle. And when you help them put that together, asking the right questions, exploring their feelings, making them aware of things that were not otherwise on their radar, it just builds very quickly. And that core self that they really need to have in order to feel confident and that they have the ability to change their own world and to have a new normal, and then to change a path and move forward in a different direction that they would have taken. They would have been somewhere else had we not stepped in and shown them those things.
Right. Do you think, I happen to think kids are pretty brilliant. And I always kind of believed in maybe when I was a really young father, I thought spankings, and, I pretty quickly figured out, no, I found out the kids, you can talk to them. And I see it on Facebook. Again, here we're back to Facebook, and they have the picture of the wooden spoon or some wooden board with spikes coming out of it, and here's the solution to 911, a good old-fashioned ass whipping. And I'm thinking, no, it won't. No. That's not the answer.
Yeah.
But I believe what you're saying in the accountability. I think you can talk. With I had one stepson, and he would tell you the story. I don't think he would mind me telling the story at all. And he was pretty upset. Things didn't go real well for him. And I just talked to him one time, and I said, wouldn't it be great if we could just get along and everybody be happy and we could take care of each other? And man, he just I saw just an immediate 180-degree turn. And this kid all my kids are great, but this kid, just the way that he changed, it was just remarkable, and I'll never ever forget it.
Was that not a possibility before that point? Something that wasn't on
I don't
his
think
radar.
anybody ever listened to him.
Right.
Paid attention to what he had to say, and I think, number one, having somebody take into account what he had to say and take him seriously, I think was possibly key.
Absolutely.
In that situation. It's been so long ago, I haven't really asked him, but I'm going to ask him one of these days and go, what was the key moment?
Yeah, what made the difference? Yeah. Well, and that conversation that you just described right there, somebody that would listen and not interrupt, just hear everything that they had to say and then repeat it back to them. So this is what I heard that, this is what you want. And if that child has a chance to state everything that they want from their point of view, and you just state that back to them, they feel heard. They finally feel validated that you get it. But then you should be able to flip the coin and say what you need, what you want, and have them state it back so that they understand too. It's a two-way street. That communication line has to be open. Once it is, you can really make a lot of progress because they feel supported and that unconditional love is there, and that's when you can start working on things.
Yeah, well, I think, I've said this on the show before. I mean, I think, I hate to sound Pollyanna. I don't hate to sound Pollyanna. I think, I think love goes a long way, and I do think love conquers all. and you show them kids some love and provide a place where they can have a little bit of love,
Right.
that it changes everything. Now, tell me about Mommy Lisa.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so we talked about how you're just I could just tell you're just a mom to the core. You're just a nurturer, and you're born to take care of
Yeah.
kids. And you had a friend that was maybe didn't fit in quite as well, and you really nurtured her and was a good friend to her, and you
Yeah.
got made fun of for it.
I did. You know, she wasn't necessarily socially acceptable or socially accepted. She had a little bit of a speech impediment. She had a gait to her walk, and she definitely stood out. But she was just the most kind-hearted, sweet, loving girl, and I befriended her. We would play and hang out and things like that, and I would do what she wanted to do. She had some limitations, so I did leave the group, the kick the can type group, or climb the trees and things like that. And I would always go over every afternoon and see what she was up to. And one day I was going home, and the kids across the street were sitting up in the tree, and they were saying, "Oh, there goes Mommy Lisa." And I just knew at that moment. I just stopped right in my tracks. I didn't even say anything to them. I just said, "No, I'm in the right here. I'm doing the right thing. You are wrong." And I remember I didn't even look at them. I just kept walking.
I love that, and you were able to ferret that out. Sometimes, those of us who try, those people that try to do the right thing do suffer ridicule. We're under 1 minute. You got 30 seconds. Tell me something about what you do that you haven't got to say yet.
Oh gosh, I really do help people find who they are, how they fit into this world, what makes them tick, and what their dreams and goals are. And that sounds kind of cliche, but at the same time, they don't know that. They come to me very scattered, and I can just kind of pull all that in, give them some clarity and focus, and give them something to work with some blinders on sometimes. They need that sometimes.
Nice. What's your website?
LisaWoodford.com.
Hi, thank you very much for tuning in. This has been Lisa Woodford with Let's Just Walk Coaching. The show's been brought to you by Nebraska Counseling and Hypnosis Center. This has been Mind and Body Wellness. Like us on Facebook, check us out on Twitter, give us a thumbs up. Thanks for tuning in. It's been a great interview.
Great.
Really loved it. Let's have you on again.
All right, thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.